Warning. This episode is extremely dark and includes stories about brutal accidents, death and suicide. Please do not watch this if you are not mentally prepared to cope with such things. What has been a deep dark secret you have kept hidden? I was walking super depressed around St. Louis once. I was about 17. Saw a young heavy-set woman crying and muttering, something like "help me, help me." I kept walking, avoiding eye contact and saying something like "not today, sorry." A few hundred feet later I looked back and saw her wading into the river, paused for a few moments and she disappeared. It was freezing and nobody else saw. I was considering suicide myself at the time and figured I had witnessed a victory instead of a defeat. Nowadays I am sorry and shamed, but back then I was jealous. This was back in 2014 or so. For a couple of years I held the fact that I was heading into an early grave. I was 23, wasn't likely to make it past 40. I had, technically still have, but it's under control, a bowel thing that periodically hit the halt button on my ability to digest food. Consider lots of gross details omitted. Broke up with my girlfriend, she wanted kids and I refused the idea of having children who'd have to watch me die before they graduate. Plus she's the Christian type to stick by me even if it crushes her dreams, not gonna allow that. Refused to tell my parents. We see plenty of each other already and I didn't want them to spend 5 to 15 years thinking about how they were probably going to bury me. Really glad I did because after a year of fiddling with experimental treatments, simple testosterone pills given to counteract other medication turned out to be all I needed. I'm a moron with medical jargon, but they kickstart something in my thyroid which made my pancreas work more normally, which stabilized my bowels. Pretty much just pop a couple whenever I start to feel low and I'm all good for a month or so. I think I'm unable to be passionate. I have interests, kinda, I have hobbies, of sorts, but if you were to ask me what I wanted in life in general or just in the moment, the best answer I got is to not die in the next 2 decades or so. I went over to my uncle's place to go swimming a few years ago. I had to take one of those big poops, so I went in their half bath right inside the house. Apparently, I didn't flush enough so it flooded the inside of the house with toilet water and my poops. But my cousin went to pee right before it flooded, so he got blamed for it and had to help clean it up. The only reason I didn't come forward is because I went to the store and came back when they were almost done cleaning, so I felt like going "oh, that was me," would just escalate the anger even further. So I just let it end and never brought it up again. Many years ago I was dispatched to a job for an adult male struck by subway. As a paramedic I have been down this road a few times, it never ends well for anyone. FDNY got the train blocked and the MTA guys had the third rail covered and grounds placed, so it was time for me to slip under the car and figure a way out. As I slipped in and began talking to the patient, and it became very obvious he was not going to live. His face was looking down at the ties but his feet were facing up, one leg was under his neck. He basically was folded in half and turned 180 degrees over the length of his body. The weight of the subway car was holding his intestines and liver in position. His back was opened and one kidney was actually exposed. I started an IV and gave him some IV morphine. I slithered up to his face and had the single most difficult conversation I ever had with him, about the fact that as soon as we moved the subway car he was going to slip into shock and die. I refused to ever not be 100% honest with my patients. He asked me a few questions about the process and what was going to happen. I asked if he wanted to call anyone and he said no. Knowing what was about to happen, I asked if he wanted more morphine. I had an open order so I gave him an extremely stiff dose. I wanted to eliminate as much of his suffering as possible. He got basically 3 doses at once. He wasn't conscious when we lifted the car. He had no blood pressure and went into a cardiac arrhythmia almost instantly. He never felt a thing. I have ataraxia. It's defined as the absence of worry essentially. So I don't get worried about anything ever. You might think, wow, that sounds flipping amazing. It isn't. If my boss is correcting me, I'm just sitting there absorbing what it is I need to correct. I don't look scolded or anything people look for when they correct someone. If there is a deadline that needs to be met, you get the same reaction out of me whether it's 6 weeks away or 6 minutes. I used to work probation and parole. One of my bosses said that I was too callous when dealing with offenders because I couldn't be worried for them. When my wife is upset with me she thinks I don't give a crap. I do, but in my own way I guess. It's from an early childhood trauma I don't remember. My wife knows about it and teases me by calling me autistic. This isn't nice to autistic people, but I'm fairly certain this is how she processes my perceived apathy over everything in life. If I were to liken it to anything in popular culture, I would say that I emulate the dude. But not a good way, more in a sad way, I guess. I was repeatedly molested by my brother when I was growing up. I didn't even register it as something bad. It was until recently, when I was remembering, that I noticed that his games were actually sexual abuse. Now, that thought has been in my mind almost every hour of every day. It's consuming me and burning me out, and I don't know what to do. In Japan, I heart surgeon. Number 1. Steady hand. One day, Yakuza boss need new heart. I do operation. But, mistake. Yakuza boss die. Yakuza very mad. I hide in fishing boat, come to America. No English, no food, no money. Daryl give me job. Now I have house, American car, and new woman. Daryl save life. My big secret, I kill Yakuza boss on purpose. I good surgeon. The best. I have a delusional disorder, and don't listen to the voices anymore, even though I still have contact with them. I miss when I believed that I had special powers, and could talk to God. Here's 3 that I haven't told anyone until today. Number 1. I had sex with a transvestite for money because I was homeless and starving. I thought he was my friend, so I asked him for food or cash. He then said he wanted to try something since he apparently had a crush on me this entire time and offered me $200. I had to get really drunk in order to do this. Then I woke up the next morning hungover and the money suddenly disappeared out of my pocket. So, basically did it for free, but then he gave me a sandwich because thinks it must have been stolen by his roommates. Number 2. Sex hurts me, like psychologically. I've been screwed up big time since I was 10 years old. Till this day, the idea of sex or anything affectionate actually feels like my soul is being ripped apart by Satan more than it brings me joy. I'm a pretty decent looking guy who attracts women often, but I've never once held a relationship for this reason. I wanted to feel again, but I can't seem to. Number 3. I've been seriously thinking about suicide for the past 2 years. I've learned to never speak about things like this to anyone, ever. As a guy, I don't really ever talk about my feelings because I'm afraid of the social stigma, but I can feel the day coming when I'll finally just drive my car into a brick wall at full speed. Almost succeeded 7 months ago. I'm addicted to Unisom. I'm in college and have 4 830 classes. I had a roommate and she kept me up at night, so I went to 7-Eleven and bought Unisom and threw away the receipt. If she was with her friends, I'd just pop one when they showed up. If her and her boyfriend were arguing at 4 a.m., I'd take one. I'm not at the point where I take 40 a day, but sometimes if I feel like I can't sleep, I'll just take one, or if I want to take a nap at 12:30 until 4 and can't get to sleep fast enough, I'll take one. Must have finished half the pack, and already I'm building a tolerance. Not at the point where I take 50 a day like Eminem did, but I feel I might be if I don't stop. I've been trying to get clean, and want to go 26 days without it. In fact, because of his songs, I only take one if I have to, since I live in a dorm. Science says if you go 26 days without a habit, you lose it. I did tell my mom I took a midday nap on one, but I blamed it on Advil PM and a nasty headache from being tired. She got mad, so I lied and just said the headache was so bad I had to sleep it off. Thankfully I got my own room, but keep taking pills, since I didn't want to waste the money and I felt like it was no big deal. I decided to quit because one day I had to wake up with my alarm and spent a good minute forgetting I was asleep. I couldn't move and everything was blurry. I was so scared because what if there was a fire and I couldn't wake up? I live in a dorm, after all. In addition, I've begun zoning out in all my classes or not talking in classes where participation is your grade. I even showed up to one of my classes off of sleeping pills, looking high as a kite. It sucks for classes like ASL where you can't talk and have to look at the signs. I'm on day 3 of detox, as I started Wednesday. Thing is, it sucks being sober. I figured if I leave the pills at school, I'll end up not wanting to use them. I get pounding headaches, I always feel nauseous and tired, and I flip my emotions like a switch. I even threw up last night. If I get asked about my headaches, I'll just blame it on the snow and the cold weather. In fact, I thought my withdrawal symptoms were the cold weather, since I always get bad headaches during the cold, but after Googling my symptoms, I realized poop. I don't tell my parents because they'll kill me. For stuff like the vomiting, I blamed it on eating too much, since the night I went home, I had a lot of Chinese food. I don't even know if they have an idea, since a lot of my parents' friends were the type to get addicted to stuff. Even my mom, not parent I'm talking about, Herself is addicted to a lot of pills, and I bet sleeping pills might be one of them. If anything, I'll blame it on stuff like I didn't get enough sleep or I picked up a virus at school. Thanks for listening this slightly darker episode of Radio TTS. I was shocked about some of these stories. Very dark and very brutal, but the reality is not a soap opera. And sometimes it is good to listen to these things in order to be more appreciative about the good things. Hit the subscribe button for more videos with lighter content.